So thank you very much for having me here today. I work at the MS International Federation, which is a network of patient advocacy organisations from across the world. But today I'm here in my capacity as representing the Global Patient Reported Outcomes for MS initiative, PROMS initiative, and hopefully what I'm going to do might actually talk about looking at the problem from different angles, because the really key thing is that the PROMS initiative is an international collaboration of many different communities. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how it fits in this landscape of early change detection. We've heard about some of the challenges when it comes to recognising and measuring change in MS and acting on what we find out. So one of the key goals of the PROMS initiative is to bring together people who have different perspectives and backgrounds and get them talking and understanding each other's perspectives. And we take a broad approach across research, healthcare, health systems, regulatory agencies. And the reason we can do this is because this initiative is led by MSIF, and our patient advocacy organisation members have agreed this is really important to solve, and the European Charcot Foundation, which is a group of neurologists and researchers and industry. I'm really grateful to Victoria for describing her lived experience of noticing changes and symptoms and the impact that that had on her, of not knowing when to mention something to your healthcare professional and whether you were even going to be taken seriously of when you do mention it or not. And this really resonates with what I hear from the people with MS that I work alongside in the PROMS initiative. And for our initiative, the lived experience is the starting point of everything that we do. And we have a team of people with MS who guide the initiative both at a high level strategically, but also as partners in our research activities, such as co-designing the surveys that then we distribute widely to people with MS. One of these recent surveys gained responses from 5,000 participants across the world, uncovering the symptoms that are experienced most frequently and have the greatest impact on daily life. So we're getting valuable data to back up what people with MS tell us, which is there is no single tool or outcome measure that is going to be right and able to measure people's MS at all stages of their lives, or for everyone with MS. We know that people with MS all experience MS in a different way. We need to take a more personalised approach if we want to measure change in a way that is meaningful, whether we're thinking about this in research studies or in the clinic. But we also know it's not as simple as just choosing a few measures that reflect the most frequently experienced or the most disruptive symptoms. Because how do we know that a change in a particular symptom is actually related to a change in a person's underlying MS or all the other things that go on in somebody's life? And if somebody comes into a clinic saying they've experienced a particular symptom getting worse, can the healthcare professional actually do anything about it? We definitely don't want to end up in the situation of collecting and reporting a load of data that burdens the person with MS who's collecting it and burdens the healthcare professionals and doesn't help them to manage care. So the views from healthcare professionals within the PROMS initiative are also crucially important. Another consideration is which symptoms already have patient-reported outcomes which are developed and tested or collected in registries. So we're trying to find that out. We're doing a survey to MS registry owners to see what is already used. We want to know more about which MS symptoms can be passively measured by wearables or sensor devices so that it reduces the burden on individuals. And we've recently run another global survey to aim to understand how people with MS currently monitor their symptoms, ideally would like to measure their symptoms, and their access to and their perspectives on using digital technology in this way. And then what about research and clinical trials? So if the regulatory agency doesn't think that patient-reported outcome measures, or the ones that we have, are reliable and valid, and isn't going to make decisions based on them, then this makes it a lot harder for industry to develop treatments with those outcomes as a primary endpoint. So this is why the PROMS initiative is trying to bring all of these communities together into the room and to have these conversations from the different perspectives. So what we are aiming for, I don't have the solution now, but this is what we're moving towards, is to put together all of this insight from the surveys to people with MS, for the landscaping, and to use this to try and develop a consensus among the whole MS community on a small number of patient-reported outcome measures that can detect change in MS. So can we agree on some measures that we can describe with a common language that are meaningful to the varied population of people with MS across the world, where a change in a score on a patient-reported outcome measure relates to a biological or clinical change in MS, that are not burdensome to people with MS or the healthcare professional, that so maybe we can measure them passively with digital technology, and a system where data can interface with clinical systems so it can all be put together, and measures that can be acted on by a healthcare professional, whether this is around providing symptomatic therapy or rehabilitation, or whether it's a sign of progression and maybe needs a change in DMT, and that fulfill the strict criteria of the regulators. So if we can get our broad community to agree on a few of these patient-reported outcome measures, then we can test them in practice. Maybe we can get them used consistently in networks of MS care units, and then collect data on how using these patient-reported outcome measures in the clinic setting makes a difference, understand the barriers to adopting them and what we can do to overcome that. So the PROMS initiative came about because people with MS told us there was a need for urgent change, because the measures that we currently have don't reflect what you experience in terms of the changes in symptoms. And so as a result, people with MS are not getting the best care. So MS advocacy organisations have taken up this cause, and we are going to continue to play this convening role across the wider MS community so we can drive this forwards. Thank you.